Hi, I'm Susanna Cluff-Clyburne, and I'm Senior Director of Parliamentary Affairs at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And with me this afternoon is David Downey, who's the CEO of ArcoInfo Inc. And ArcoInfo is a business processing automation company that provides digital software solutions. And David is also the chair of the Canadian Chamber's SME Policy Committee. So David, thank you very much for joining me and for taking the time to provide us with an entrepreneur's perspective on the COVID-19 crisis. Before we get
Thanks
started,
for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's really our honor to have you with us. Before we get started, could you just tell us a little bit about what ArcoInfo does?
Yeah, sure. So ArcoInfo is a Canadian subsidiary of a Belgian software company, which is probably a bit of a rare animal when it comes to knowing what comes from Belgium. But our company's been in business for 25 years. We've started up here in Canada for 2 years, and our focus is providing digital solutions to improve efficiencies for different types of workflows. So that can be something as specific as helping to automate the menial tasks within an accounts payable department to allow the workers to be able, employees to be able to do more and stay away from having to do the busy work type of tasks. We also, from our platform, which we call Doma, where we basically provide a configurable platform to build solutions on. So whether that's a new solution, excuse me, for tracking the performance of a lighting system, if that's a new way of managing your HR paperwork, all of these things can be done through our platform, and it's designed to be configurable as opposed to something that's like a coding program. So we have some out-of-the-box solutions that we provide in the business workflow, and we have a lot of other opportunities based on building that platform.
Thanks a lot, David. So the Canadian Chamber worked with Statistics Canada on a survey of business conditions, and that was conducted in April, and the results came out in early May. The clear message from that survey was that SMEs in Canada have been hit extremely hard. We knew they would be, but they have really been hit hard by the COVID-19 crisis. And I just wondered, has COVID-19 had an impact on your business?
Yeah, it's interesting being in the software space, and especially related to automation, which reduces the cost of processing different types of workflows. We actually have had a lot of our customer base is considered essential services. We do a lot of work with the governments and a lot of big business, insurance companies, banking, and so forth. So interestingly enough, that's kept us reasonably busy. But we have made some adjustments. Our employees are working on 4-day weeks now. The management teams have taken a 40% wage reduction. So it has had some effect on the ability for our company to deliver on projects that were already booked. So we've been fortunate in the sense that our business has continued based on the projects that were kind of underway. But we had a backlog that was pretty good, and now we're seeing a lot of that going on hold because nobody knows exactly how this is going to go, what sort of cash resources are going to be available. So for us as a small company here in Canada, having only been out here for 2 years, we've seen about a 50% drop in our revenue just because of the projects that were non-essential in our client base that had to be turned off. So that's been the biggest effect that I think we've seen locally here. We don't have a large number of employees because we're a small startup. So that's been something that's been, I guess, fortunate for us. But knowing that there's not lots of companies that's not so fortunate, they've had many people that have suffered because of this.
Yeah, that's true, and the numbers that come out from Stats Canada on a monthly basis demonstrate that pretty profoundly. Just wondering, David, have you applied for or been able to receive any assistance from the various federal support programs that have been introduced?
I haven't been able to apply, and that's kind of a loaded comment in the sense that I have not. I've done the pass through on the federal government's COVID-19 assistance page, and it's a very impressive roster of things that are available. I think with me personally, my focus has been on the CEBA funding, and unfortunately,
that's the Canada Emergency Bank account.
Canada Emergency, yeah,
business account,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that funding has been elusive for me because of just the way that I've done business. in the sense of not being not paying myself as a employee, and also the fact that the banks seem to, my bank at least, seems to be relatively slow in adopting the changes. I've heard some comments from some of the bank personnel about the fact that they're not getting enough notice and so forth, but I still think that it can be that needs to be improved, because we literally are talking about literally day-to-day, week-to-week difference for the companies that need this funding. And you know, I'm bootstrapping myself right now, and I had a reasonable emergency fund, I guess you could say it. So I feel fortunate that way. But ask me about that in about 30 days.
Yeah.
And I think that what I'm concerned about with the programs is just the time it takes for a company to go through and sort of fill out the applications and figure out ways to fit themselves into the box that they need to fit is something that I think is a little bit difficult for companies to adopt, especially smaller ones that are struggling just to stay alive. So I haven't personally, but I hope that the changes that were made that allow for me to now fit into the SEBA planning, I hope in a couple of weeks I'll be able to say that I've been able to apply.
Good. Well, keep us posted on that. What are you hearing within your circle of entrepreneurs, your associates, your business partners offshore, in terms of the impact the crisis is having on them and businesses within that small category, but also on how their governments are reacting to it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to a few different colleagues. I think that our folks in Belgium, for our parent company, had a pretty immediate and pretty in-depth response from the government to help the companies when things started happening. So I think I'm impressed with what they've done. Not to diminish what's been done on our side, because I can't believe how fast some of the things are coming together from the governments in Canada. But there's definitely been, I would say that the response times in Belgium, for instance, have been very, very quick and very in depth. So not necessarily siloing some of the people that are looking for a certain type of response. I think also, you know, the blunt reality is that, especially since for the SME area, which I'm focused on with you and which I am myself, I think it's just a case of business owners in general are used to overcoming adversity, but the smaller ones don't have the resources of bigger companies. So when they're fighting against fill in the blank, I think they're just used to the resiliency of having to fight through stuff to keep going. So I think that's something that the people that I'm talking to are kind of looking at, like, yeah, this is unprecedented. This is something that they haven't seen before, but it is just another challenge. And as a small business or medium enterprise, you face these challenges all the time anyways. So you just find a way to get through. And I think that's something to be proud of. But I'd like to see some improvement in the support, because the typical response is just like, yeah, we're just trying to get through. The other thing that's challenging too is that the application is one thing, but the approval is another. And I've talked to a few different people on the solopreneurs of accountants and so forth that have a bit of an inside track on working with programs, and they've applied for things, but it's 2 months later and they still haven't seen any response. So I know that the capacity things are a real issue. I'm biased because my business is about solving capacity issues, but I hope that we come out of this with an understanding that preparing for the rainy day, in this case, of COVID-19, is a critical thing to make sure that we continue to get out of this in a positive way and get back to business.
Well, actually, I'd like to end on coming out of this with you, and I'm wondering, you know, we're starting to see economies across the country start to reopen, stage 1, stage 2 in some provinces and territories, and we at the Canadian Chamber are starting to think about what recovery should look like and what we should be advocating on behalf of our members. What are your views on what business and the government should be thinking about as we look forward to recovery, and how should that look?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. Just thinking about the fact that, man, there's so much out there about theories from different people, experts and non-experts, saying how this is going to look. And the truth of the matter is in recent times we haven't faced something that's had such an effect like this. So there's some things about the way, obviously, working from home. Wow, it's going to be a totally different thing now. It might be a preferred thing. It might be a way of providing more flexibility for hiring and those sorts of things. Those are all benefit things. But if I could put it in a simple way, I'd say that the two words that speak to me is that we need to think about flexibility and agility. And flexibility is related, both of those terms are related in two different periods. There's now till we have a vaccine, and there's post-vaccine. Until we have a vaccine, just the characteristics of this disease and the virus and the way that it can actually affect things, it's going to be really difficult, I think, to keep it at bay. I love the summer. I'm concerned about what I'm seeing with people going out again and not social distancing. So that's one thing I think that those two words and those two periods are the thing that I think is going to be really critical. And the other thing I think is that there needs to be a real attempt to analyze those that didn't make it. There's a lot of bodies in the streets, unfortunately, and I think that in order for us to understand how we can better serve the companies that don't necessarily fit into the easily identifiable headings, I think we're going to have to be able to analyze who's out there that didn't make it, and I think that also has an effect on how are we going to end up recovering when so many services and so many companies that other companies relied on are no longer there to provide their services. So, but I think those terms of flexibility and agility and those two areas of pre-vaccine and post-vaccine, those are the filters through which I think we're going to have to look at things, and then just pray that we don't have a reoccurrence or another event like this.
Yeah, I think we've all, both in business and government, have learned lessons in agility and flexibility as well, and where we do well and where we need to improve. So, David, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and we wish you and your business all the best. And thanks again for your time.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to do work with the Chamber, and if I can just throw a little support in for, I think the Canadian Chamber's moved some major mountains on this on behalf of Canadian business, and just really proud to be a part of the organization, and thanks for the opportunity to talk with you today.